the thirst that binds the blood. Start with the sound of gentle, distant chanting, mixed with the chirping of cicadas at dusk. A soft, warm, ambient sound. The air in my grandmother's house was always thick, not in a bad way, usually. It was a comfortable weight, heavy with the humidity of the Kampong Chnang countryside, the smell of rain on dusty earth, and the scent of wood smoke from the cooking fire. During Pchum Ben, that air became something more. It became sacred. This year was no different, or so I thought. I had come from the noise and hustle of Phnom Penh, trading the roar of motos for the gentle lapping of the river against the stilts of our family home. The 15 days of Pchum Ben are a time for remembrance, for honoring the ancestors who have passed on. My grandmother, Mai, took it more seriously than anyone I knew. Her hands, wrinkled and stained with the wisdom of 80 years, were never still. She was always rolling rice balls, steaming banana leaf parcels, or lighting incense. The scent of that incense, a sweet and floral jasmine, was the first thing that greeted me. It was meant to be a welcoming path for the spirits of our ancestors, a fragrant bridge from their world to ours. It was the smell of my childhood, the smell of respect. On the third night, everything began to change. The monks' chants from the village pagoda, usually a comforting drone on the edge of hearing, drifted through the open windows. But tonight, they sounded fragile, as if the wind was trying to tear them apart before they could reach us. I was sitting on the cool woven mat, watching Yi at the small altar she had prepared. A pyramid of Nam Ansam steamed rice cakes filled with pork and mung bean sat as the centerpiece. Their vibrant green wrapping, fresh from the banana trees, was a sign of life, of a bountiful offering. That's when a chill crept over the floorboards. It was a strange cold, not from a breeze, but a deep internal cold that seemed to rise up from the cracks in the wood. It made the fine hairs on my arms stand on end. I watched, my breath held in my chest, as the pyramid of rice cakes seemed to sag. The vibrant green of the banana leaves began to fade, turning a sickly, bruised gray right before my eyes. The taut parcels slackened, as if the life had been sucked right out of them. And then came the smell. The jasmine incense was still burning, its thin ribbon of smoke curling towards the ceiling, but its beautiful scent was being murdered. A new smell pushed its way into the room, overpowering and vile. It was the smell of rot. Sharp, foul, like a jackfruit left to split and fester in the unrelenting sun. It clung to the back of my throat, a taste of decay that made me want to gag. Yi's hand trembled as she lit another joss stick. Her lips moved, a whispered prayer I couldn't quite hear. And beneath her prayer, beneath the distant chanting of the monks, another sound began. It came from the darkness beneath the house, a faint, high-pitched wail. It wasn't a cry of anger or a shriek of terror. It was a sound of pure, unending agony, a thin, reedy keen that spoke of a desperate, unquenchable thirst. It was the sound of a throat so dry it could never form a word, of lips so cracked they could never accept a drop of water. It was the sound of a suffering that was somehow, impossibly, my own blood. Yi closed her eyes, and a single tear traced a path through the deep lines on her cheek. Her whispered prayer was lost, swallowed whole by that terrible, thirsty sound from below. The next morning, the sun did little to burn away the dread of the night. The air in the house still felt wrong, tainted. The pyramid of rice cakes on the altar was a shriveled, gray mess. Yi had already thrown them out, her face a mask of grim determination. She didn't speak of what happened. In Khmer culture, you learn that some things are best left unspoken. To give a name to a dark spirit is to give it power, to invite it closer. So we pretended. We pretended it was just a bad batch of rice, that the smell was a dead animal somewhere nearby. I told myself that. I repeated it in my head as I helped her prepare the morning's offerings for the pagoda. We shaped the Bay Ben, the small balls of rice, and placed them in a silver bowl. But my hands felt clumsy, my mind elsewhere. I kept glancing towards the floorboards, half expecting to hear that thin, desiccated wail again. "Dara," Yi said, her voice quiet but firm. She didn't look at me. "When we go to the pagoda, you pray hard. You pray for the ancestors who are lost." The word she used, lost, sent another one of those unnatural chills through me. She didn't say the dead. She said the lost, as if they were still wandering, trapped somewhere between the realms. The walk to the pagoda was usually something I enjoyed. The path was worn smooth by generations of bare feet, winding through rice paddies that shimmered like green glass in the morning sun. But today, every shadow seemed too long, too deep. The cheerful greetings from other villagers felt hollow, or maybe it was me who was hollow. At the pagoda, the air was thick with the smoke of 1,000 incense sticks. Monks in saffron robes chanted the sutras, their voices rising and falling in a rhythm as old as the stones of Angkor. I watched my grandmother. She presented our offerings with a grace that defied her age, but her eyes were not peaceful. They were scanning the faces of the other worshippers, the statues of the Buddha, the very air itself, as if searching for something she was terrified to find. I did as she asked. I knelt, I pressed my palms together, and I prayed. I prayed for my grandfather, for my great-aunts and uncles, for all the names I could remember. And then I prayed for the lost ones. As the words formed in my mind, I felt it again. A cold spot in the warm, crowded temple. And with it, the faint, phantom smell of rot, a ghostly miasma that cut through the heavy scent of incense and lotus blossoms. My eyes snapped open. I looked around, but no one else seemed to notice. An old woman beside me was weeping softly for her husband. A young boy was fidgeting, bored. It was just me. It was for me. The wailing didn't return that day, but the feeling of being watched never left. It was a constant pressure at the back of my neck. That evening, as I lay on my mat trying to sleep, I listened to the sounds of the night. The chirping of geckos, the distant bark of a village dog, the rustle of wind in the palm leaves. Normal sounds. But underneath them, I felt a silence that was not empty, but full. A listening silence. I must have drifted off because my dreams were filled with a suffocating heat. I was in a place of cracked, dry earth. The sun was a white-hot coin in a merciless sky. My throat was on fire. I have never known a thirst like it. It wasn't just a physical need. It was an agony of the soul. I tried to cry out. But my tongue was a swollen, useless thing in my mouth. I clawed at the dirt, my nails breaking, desperate for a single drop of moisture. I could hear water, a river rushing somewhere far away, but I couldn't move towards it. I was tethered to this barren patch of hell. I woke up with a gasp, drenched in sweat, my own throat painfully dry. I scrambled for the bottle of water by my mat and drank nearly the whole thing in a few desperate gulps. The cool liquid was a blessing, but it didn't wash away the memory of that dream thirst. And then I heard it. The wail, it was back, but it wasn't coming from beneath the house anymore. It was closer. It sounded like it was just outside the thin, woven walls of my room. It was higher now, more frantic. The sound of a suffering that had grown impatient. I lay frozen on the mat, my heart hammering against my ribs so hard I thought it would break through. Every rational thought I had, the city boy's logic, the belief in science and reason, evaporated into pure, primal fear. This was not a dead animal. This was not the wind. This was the source of my dream. The sound moved. I could hear a faint, dry shuffling like dead leaves being dragged across the dirt. It was circling the house. Slowly, methodically. The wail would stop, and in the silence, I could hear that terrible, dragging sound. And then the wail would start again from a new position. It was searching. I wanted to call out for my grandmother, but my voice was trapped in my throat, just like in the dream. I could hear her in the next room, the soft creak of the floorboards as she paced. She was awake, too. She was listening. She had been listening to this for years. The shuffling stopped directly below my window. The wailing ceased. The silence that followed was worse than the noise. It was heavy, expectant. I held my breath, listening. My ears strained, trying to catch any sound. A soft scratching began on the wooden stilt right beneath my head. Scratch, scratch, scratch. A dry, brittle sound, like bones scraping against wood. It was trying to get in. I couldn't take it anymore. I let out a strangled cry and scrambled away from the wall, pressing myself into the far corner of the room. The scratching stopped. The wailing began again, but this time it was different. It was filled with a terrible, frustrated sorrow. Then I heard the dry, shuffling sound retreat, fading back into the oppressive darkness of the countryside. I didn't sleep again that night. As the first hint of dawn painted the sky a bruised purple, I went to the main room. Yi was already there, sitting by the cold hearth, her face looking impossibly old in the dim light. She didn't seem surprised to see me. "Yi," I whispered, my voice hoarse. "What is that? What wants to get in?" She looked at me, her eyes deep pools of ancient sorrow. She patted the mat beside her, an invitation to sit. I did, and the warmth from her small frame was the only comfort in the cold room. "An offering is not always enough," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "Sometimes the sin is too great. The hunger, the thirst, it cannot be filled by a simple bowl of rice." "What sin, Yi? Whose sin?" She was silent for a long time, her gaze fixed on the altar, now empty and clean. "Our sin, Dara, the sin of our blood." She told me that it had been this way every Pchum Ben for as long as she could remember, and for her mother before her. A presence that haunted their bloodline. A hungry ghost, a Pret, bound to their family by a terrible karmic debt. Most Pret are pitiable creatures, with mouths the size of a needle's eye and bellies as large as mountains, forever starving. They are the spirits of the greedy, the cruel, the selfish. They suffer until their bad karma is exhausted, or until their living relatives can ease their torment with merits and offerings. But this one was different. Its suffering was absolute. Its thirst was a cosmic wound that could never be healed. "Why?" I pressed, my fear giving way to a desperate need for answers. "Why is it tied to us?" Yi finally turned to look at me, and in her eyes I saw not just fear, but guilt. A guilt so profound it seemed to have carved the lines into her face. "Because it was our family that made it that way." She got up and went to a large, dusty wooden chest in the corner, a chest I had never seen her open before. She fumbled with an old brass key, her hands shaking so much it took her several tries to unlock it. She lifted the heavy lid, and the smell of camphor and old memories filled the air. She reached inside and pulled out a small, tattered object wrapped in yellowed silk. She placed it in my hands. It was a photograph, one of those old, sepia-toned portraits. It showed two young women, barely more than girls, standing in front of a house that looked very much like this one. They both wore traditional sampots, their black hair long and shining. One of the girls was my grandmother. She was smiling, but her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. The other girl was taller, with a fierce, proud look on her face. She was beautiful. "Who is this?" I asked, tracing the outline of the unknown girl's face. "That," he said, her voice cracking, "is Soria, my older sister." I had never heard of her. In all the stories, all the family histories, Yi had always been an only child. "She died," Yi whispered, her eyes fixated on the photograph. "A long time ago, before the wars. There was a drought, the worst anyone could remember. The rivers shrank to muddy trickles, the wells turned to dust. People were getting sick from the bad water. They were dying." She paused, taking a shaky breath. "Soria was clever and stubborn. She would walk for hours further into the forest than anyone else dared to go. And one day she found it. A small, hidden spring deep in the rock where the water ran clean and cool. It was just enough for our family. She made me promise not to tell a soul. It was our secret, our survival." Her story painted a vivid picture in my mind. A village gripped by thirst, and two sisters with a life-giving secret. "But I was young," Yi continued, her voice thick with self-loathing. "And I was jealous of her. Everyone loved Soria. She was brave, she was beautiful, I was just her little shadow. There was a boy in the village, he liked her. I wanted him to notice me." Her gaze dropped to her hands, clasped tightly in her lap. "So I told him. I told him the secret. I traded my sister's trust for a boy's fleeting smile. I thought he would just take a little water for his family." She shook her head, a slow, painful motion. "But he was selfish. He told his family and they told others. Within a day, the whole village knew. They descended on the spring. They fought over it, they fouled it with their greed, and in 2 days it was as dry as all the other wells. When Soria went to collect water that evening, there was nothing left." A terrible understanding began to dawn on me. "She was furious with me," he said, a tear finally escaping and running down her cheek. "She said I had condemned us all. She said she would find more water, that she would go further than ever before. She walked back into the forest that evening, and she never came back. They searched for weeks, but the forest was deep, and the drought had made it a dangerous, unforgiving place. They never found her body. They just assumed she had been taken by wild animals or had simply collapsed from exhaustion and heat. The village mourned, the drought eventually broke, and life went on. But for my grandmother's family, peace never truly returned. A few months later, on the next Pchum Ben, Yi whispered, her eyes wide with the memory, it began, a faint sound from the forest, a crying. Over the years, it grew closer. After my parents died, it came to the house. It is her, Dara. It is Soria. Her anger and her terrible thirst bound her to this earth. She became a pret. And because my betrayal caused her death, her suffering is tied to our blood. My sin became our family's curse. The pieces clicked into place. The sickening rot was the smell of her spiritual decay. The spoiled offerings were a sign of her rejection. Food could not quench a thirst this profound. The wailing, the scratching, it was the desperate plea of a spirit in eternal agony, forever trying to reach the family that had wronged her, forever unable to slake the thirst that had killed her. "What can we do?" I asked, my own voice a dry rasp. Yi looked at me, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of something other than fear in her eyes. It was a desperate, dangerous hope. "The elders say that a pret born of such a powerful grievance cannot be appeased by normal offerings," she said, her voice gaining a sliver of strength. "Food is meaningless to it. Chants can't reach it. Its suffering is too specific. It needs what it was denied in death." "Water," I breathed. "Not just any water," she said, her eyes locking onto mine. "It must be an offering of pure water, given freely, an act of true remorse. Dara, the old spring, the one Soria found. The rains returned it years later. No one from the village ever goes there. They say the place is haunted. They say you can hear a woman crying there when the moon is dark." A plan, as terrifying as it was necessary, formed between us without another word being spoken. We would not go to the pagoda tonight. We would make a different kind of offering. As dusk fell, the world outside seemed to hold its breath. The usual symphony of the night was muted, replaced by a tense silence. Yi filled a simple clay pot, one she had made herself, with fresh flowers. It was to be the vessel. My job was to fill it. She gave me a flashlight, its beam seeming pitifully weak against the encroaching darkness. "The path is overgrown, but you will feel it," she said. "Go straight past the old tamarind tree, then listen. You will hear the water." My heart hammered in my chest as I stepped off the porch and onto the cool earth. The air was already growing cold. I looked back at the house, a small box of warm light in a sea of black, and saw Yi's silhouette in the doorway. She was watching me. The journey into the forest was a nightmare. The beam of my flashlight cut a nervous, bouncing tunnel through the suffocating darkness. Every rustle of leaves was a dry, shuffling footstep. Every snap of a twig was the crack of bone. I felt 1,000 unseen eyes on me. The air grew heavy, and the faint, familiar smell of decay started to drift on the wind, growing stronger with every step I took away from the safety of my home. It was her. She was out here. She was waiting. I found the old tamarind tree, its branches twisted like the arthritic hands of an old man. As I passed it, I felt a sudden drop in temperature. The air became still and dead. I knew I was entering her domain. I switched off the flashlight and stood in the absolute blackness, straining my ears. At first, nothing, just the frantic pounding of my own blood. Then I heard it, a faint trickle, the sound of water running over stone. It was a beautiful sound, a sound of life in this place of death. I followed it, stumbling over roots and vines, my hands outstretched. The sound grew louder, and soon I was standing before a small clearing. In the center, a series of flat rocks were slick with moisture, and from a fissure between them, a tiny stream of water emerged, pooling in a small, clear basin before disappearing into the earth again. This was it, Soria's spring. I knelt, my hands shaking as I reached for the clay pot. The water was icy cold, a shock to my skin. As I dipped the pot into the pool, a sound made me freeze. It was the wail. But it wasn't distant anymore. It was right behind me, a thin, piercing sound of agony so intense it felt like a physical blow. I didn't dare turn around. I could feel a presence at my back, a vortex of cold and despair. The smell of rot was overwhelming now, a physical thing I could taste. I squeezed my eyes shut, my mind screaming, "Just fill the pot. Just fill the pot and go." My fingers, numb with cold and fear, fumbled with the pot. The gurgling sound as it filled was obscenely loud in the charged silence between the wails. And then I felt it. Something impossibly light, dry as dust, touched the back of my neck. It was a hesitant, desperate touch, and it burned like freezer frost. I cried out, scrambling backwards and dropping the flashlight. The beam spun wildly, illuminating a chaotic collage of twisted tree trunks, hanging vines, and for a split second, a shape. It was tall and horrifyingly thin, a mere silhouette of a person, its limbs long and skeletal. It seemed to be made of shadow and dust, a desiccated figure of sorrow. I couldn't see a face, only a sense of a head bent downwards, as if in a posture of eternal, weeping grief. Then the light spun away, and it was gone. I snatched the pot of water, which was now blessedly full, and I ran. I didn't look back. I crashed through the undergrowth, branches whipping at my face, my lungs burning. The wailing followed me, a sound of tormented rage and desperate longing. It chased me all the way to the edge of the forest and only stopped when the warm light of the house was once again in sight. I burst onto the porch, gasping for air, spilling some of the precious water. Yi was there. She grabbed my arm, her grip surprisingly strong, and pulled me inside, bolting the door. She took the pot from my trembling hands and placed it on the altar. The house was silent, deathly silent. The wailing was gone. "Now," she whispered, her voice trembling, "we ask for her forgiveness." Together, we knelt before the altar. Yi began to chant, not a formal prayer from the sutras, but a personal, desperate plea. She spoke to her sister. She confessed her sin, her jealousy, her terrible mistake. Her voice cracked with the weight of 70 years of guilt. She begged Soria to drink, to quench her eternal thirst, to let go of her anger and find peace. She asked her to cross over, to stop her suffering. I prayed, too. I prayed for an aunt I never knew, for a ghost whose pain I had felt in my own dreams. As we prayed, the water in the pot began to shimmer. A faint, pale light seemed to emanate from it. The air in the room grew warm again, and the foul stench of rot began to recede, replaced once more by the clean, sacred scent of jasmine. A sense of profound peace settled over the room. Yi was weeping freely now, but her tears were not of fear, but of release. I felt it too, a lightness. The heavy, watchful presence that had suffocated the house for days was gone. The silence that remained was empty, truly empty. It was over. For a moment, we stayed like that, kneeling in the quiet, overwhelming relief washing over us. My grandmother looked at me, a watery, grateful smile on her face. "Thank you, my boy," she whispered. "Thank you." It was in that moment of triumph, that moment of peace, that I felt a puff of air on the back of my neck. It was cold, so cold, and it felt dry like the whisper of dust. And then a voice, not a wail, not a cry, but a faint, desiccated whisper, spoke a single thought directly into my mind. It wasn't a sound that traveled through the air, but a poison that bloomed directly in my consciousness. It was a voice that hadn't been used for an eternity, cracked and broken and infinitely thirsty. Not enough. My blood ran cold. I turned my head slowly. Yi hadn't heard it. She was still smiling her weary, relieved smile. But the pot on the altar, the water was gone. The pot was as dry as a bone, and on its inside, a thin layer of gray dust had settled. The curse was not broken. The offering wasn't enough. We had not appeased her. We had only reminded her of what she could never have. We had woken her up, and now she knew my name. The Pchum Ben festival is over. I am back in Phnom Penh, surrounded by the noise and the light and the crowds. But I have never felt more alone or more afraid. The thirst from that dream returns to me every night. Sometimes, in a quiet moment, I catch the faint smell of spoiled jackfruit on the breeze. My Yi passed away a few months ago. Peacefully in her sleep, they said. But I know she just gave up. She knew the truth. The sin was too great. The debt is still owed. And I know that when the time for Pchum Ben comes again, the wailing will return. But I don't think it will be for the old house in the countryside anymore. I think it will be for me. It is my blood, after all. my sin to carry now. So if you ever travel in the Cambodian countryside and you hear a sound on the night air, a cry that sounds like unending thirst, do not try to be brave. Do not investigate. Bar your doors, light your incense, and pray that it is not your family that carries the debt, because some thirsts can never be quenched, and some sins are bound to the blood forever.